I think the issue really comes to mobilising stakeholders who are going to help with implementation. Okay, so the COP is for the parties, so it is an intergovernmental process. There is a lot more than finance going on. There's access and benefit sharing. There's the science agenda. There's national parks. There's genetic resources. There is a lot. There's discussions on forests and ocean. So there is a lot going on, but there are a couple of issues that people, I think, are becoming preoccupied with. But as the CBD starts using the Archie targets, the 2020 targets, as an implementation tool, you need to include stakeholder groups who are going to be a major part of that implementation process if you're going to be successful. So that means the NGOs. Well, the NGOs have always been at the CBDs. It means the scientists, and it's fabulous to see him there. It's coordinating the ODA, all this, but it also is business. Business is impacts on biodiversity and ecosystem service. We're a major beneficiary. We are dependent on them. Companies, once they start appreciating that, realise they have a role to play in ensuring natural services are there and continued. So my advice would be, as the CBD gets into implementation mode, that space is created for the business sector, the progressive business sector that gets it, and either reducing their impacts or innovating to bring biodiversity-friendly products in here, or innovating around markets and technologies. You need to bring those people in, and that's both big business but also small and medium-sized ways. And it doesn't mean that business should dominate the agenda. We shouldn't. But it's an opportunity to mobilise business resources. There's one thing that the business sector is very good at doing. It's managing financial capital. You don't always get it right. But it's about mobilising resources to get good services and technologies to people as consumers on time, the right place. So we're very good at mobilising resources once we have the strategic direction. So why not leverage that around biodiversity? So I think Akkam's quite right. I think the CBD and the parties need to get serious about mobilising business, not only at these international discussions and negotiations, but at the national levels. And the real opportunity for the parties is through their national biodiversity strategies and action plans. As the parties start changing their biodiversity strategies to help deliver on Archie, bring business in as you start designing policy and implementing it. And that's why we're here. With WBCSD, we're here with a new report. It's called Picking Up the Pace, and it's about accelerating public policy to deliver positive outcomes for biodiversity and ecosystem services. We're proposing a sort of a consultative model, what we're calling our accelerator model, about how you can adapt regulation, develop new regulation, and bring business and other stakeholders in. It has sort of a guidance on best practice, which often involve using good science, a multi-stakeholder approach, good measurement, good monitoring. And what we've really said, put in this publication, are 8 case studies that illustrate real action on the ground that has been driven by public policy that has leveraged business. And it covers subsidy reform, it covers fiscal incentives, green procurement, protected areas, biodiversity offsets. Because what we want to do with these case studies is sort of encourage and inspire action. Because it is really only through effective public policy that these Archie targets are going to be delivered on, that we can be serious about reversing biodiversity loss and serious about ecosystem management and ensuring we have functional ecosystems to deliver the provisioning services we all need. So we're here saying, yeah, we want to be involved, but there's got to be a more effective way of doing it than we've had here in Hyderabad.
How would that more effective way translate into actual action? Give me an idea about how you would like to see perhaps future conferences operate, or future conferences embrace business, or are you talking about more of a involvement on a national level? So give us an idea how business can get more involved.
Well, I mean, I think the real value is at the national level. So so you re-examine your permitting laws in a country. and set new requirements about biodiversity management as you develop infrastructure. You look at your forestry legislations, you look at how you're managing your wetlands, how you're managing your water generating ecosystems, how you allocate that. It's at that very practical level that you bring business in to those decision making processes. So I think that's one way. But here at a global party like this, it's probably trying to leverage global business groups who have similar objectives. So my own organisation, WBCSD, there are other ones, World Economic Forum, there's all sorts of groups. The CBD has a process, the Global Business Partnership, but bringing those people more into the discussions as opposed to running marginal side events, create space during the discussions and dialogues where major groups can make a contribution, can make interventions, can propose text, can not run the show but be a contributor. I mean, if you don't involve a key stakeholder group like business in this, you're missing the opportunity to mobilize their resources. So I represent big companies with big impacts. Big companies they can create a lot of damage through their business operation. The opportunity is to redirect that innovation and that management of financial capital and get them to start managing natural and social capital towards a sustainable future. And that's the opportunity. These companies can really make a huge difference.
There appears to be a great suspicion of the private sector amongst some parties here. I mean, I suppose on the smallest level, the cafe downstairs is the private sector. If you have a small shop, you are the private sector, you are business. Where has this suspicion come from? Has it come from, as you just said, big business, sometimes, often misusing the environment, polluting and not coughing up, or are there other sort of deeper strands we need to sort of look out for?
Look, it comes back. You can always find bad practice, and everybody's got a story about being ripped off by a taxi driver, bad experiences with a hotel, buying the wrong products. I mean, we all as consumers know that there's experience, but it's about I think it comes back from there's a lot of legacy issues, but through the sustainable development philosophy, I think you have seen some really major changes in forest management practices, and there's a revolution going on within the agribusiness sector right now to ensure that we can feed people but also conserve biodiversity and use water in an effective way. New provisions with the oil and gas sector about every time there's a major disaster, everyone wants to avoid disasters, but when there is one, there's always a ratchet up on precautions and regulations. What the cement sector, the mining sector, there are these new platforms for progressive business to take the lead. So there's a lot of our membership, our leadership on sustainable development. The value of public policy is that it mainstreams it. It takes it from just being 2 or 3 mining companies or half a dozen forestry companies to leveraging the entire sector through public policy and through scale up. So yeah, there's colonial legacies with some of the developing countries. I think one thing that governments often forget is that they're actually business as well. We had a discussion this morning about sustainable procurement. So the governments can help green markets by putting in place sustainable procurement practices, but governments also own, in many countries, major state-owned enterprises, particularly in the extractive industry. They could make those state-owned enterprises, through the performance objectives they set, major champions of biodiversity. So they're in business as well. They could green their own business sector as well, and that has a knock-on effect. So the past, there's a lot we can learn from the past, but I think one of the values of the Archie targets, it set this horizon. These are 5 really good strategic goals, and within them a whole lot of sub-targets. The way we would like to be involved, I think through WBCSD, is, okay, as global business, how can you contribute to those targets? We've started that process off. For the World Conservation Congress, we went out to a membership and said, here are the Archie targets. Are they business relevant, and do you have any projects where you're showing how you're delivering on that? We ended up with 25 really interesting case studies about how companies were reducing their impacts or innovating around sustainable use, or putting in place new technologies for water efficiency, or working with local communities around sustainable forest management. It really surprised me, and we took those companies to the World Conservation Congress. Here, our new report around picking up the pace. We've also, these are case studies of public policy that have leveraged company or sector action. We've linked them to the Archie target. So these targets sort of make sense, and I think that for business, that's how you can bring business in. Looking forward, this is a societal challenge. How can you contribute through your corporate practices to these? Because they do resonate with business. That's how we'd like to be involved.
One last question. Your report talks a bit about environmental reporting. How important is that to convince all business of the value of biodiversity? And are there, how confident are you that business, such a broad term, so saying business seems a bit stupid, but how confident are you that businesses are gradually developing an awareness of the value of the environment?
Well, I mean, I think global businesses, particularly those whose shares are publicly traded, get it already. They've learnt just how important the environment is for them and how they need to manage their carbon emissions. These same companies are having to measure and manage and mitigate their water usage. So for global companies where you have publicly traded shares, we have the investment community. The investment community is now asking these questions. If I'm going to invest in your company for the long term, are you managing your environmental biodiversity ecosystem risk effectively? So these companies are already responding to those issues as well as social issues. So it comes through, companies have to go through a journey. You have to understand your footprint first. You've got to measure. Then you need to start valuing those. And there are some very interesting tools around. Some of them are ours about how you can do valuation, how you can value your footprint, because that enables you to then make a business decision so you can start mitigating and managing those impacts. And so we're seeing a lot of uptake on this. And that, once you do that, then you can start feeding that into your sustainable development reports that most of our companies produce. Now, we see this as going to accelerate, and within WBCSD we have a major focus now on integrated accounting and reporting. So, okay, at the moment we produce financial accounts about how we manage financial capital. We'll have a 3 to 5 year project that will really innovate on how companies can start focusing in on the natural capital and the social capital and start managing those hopefully as effectively as they do on financial capital. So how do you bring these externalities onto your balance sheet is something that we'll be working really hard at, because we think if you are serious about a sustainable future, global companies have to have an integrated solution. They've got to deliver profits within the limits of the planet and deliver on the social agenda as well. So the pressure on global companies to do this from the investor community, from their customers, from their own employees, and from government is accelerating. And so our group is trying to anticipate this.